What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Age of Quarantine. I am your host, Chris Enriquez. I play in the band Spotlights, which you can follow at Spotlights Music, and I can be followed personally at Chris Enriquez Drums. I work at Revolver Magazine, which could be followed at Revolver Mag. And Age of Quarantine is a show that I started during the pandemic. And St. Vitus has graciously allowed me to do this almost every night, along with my co-hosts, David Castillo and Artie Shepard. Shout out to my bandmates in Total Meltdown, my other band, at Total Meltdown NYHC, for helping with the video editing process and the flyers. I'm going to stop babbling about myself. Thank you so much, by the way, for watching, guys, and spending your time with me this evening. My first guest plays in a legendary metalcore band called Unearth, which you hear in the background. Ken Susi is somebody that has been a constant in the band, the main sort of component, and he's just an overall really talented guitar player, really sweet dude. We came across each other recently, even though I actually played a lot of shows with them back in the day. I don't think we actually ever met. My band Spotlights and Unearth, along with Saves the Day and Slater Kinney, oddly enough, we did this sort of group interview on Facebook Live. One of the cool things about the pandemic, getting to know some people, and all talking about guitar pedals, how we get through the pandemic. Ended up talking to Ken a little bit. Was a super sweet dude, and he agreed to talk to me. And we're going to get to know him a little bit better tonight. So let's get him on the screen. And thanks again for joining. Susi of Unearth, guitar player extraordinaire. He should be appearing on screen any second now.
I'm here. Let's see.
Let's see what's going on, Ken. I hear your voice, but I see a gray screen for some reason. There he is. What's up?
Dude, what's going on, brother?
Applause.
I went all out for you guys, just so you know. I was already doing videos, so I'm like, I got the top-notch production going on right now, so I'm all well lit.
Yo, man, absolutely. That's awesome, man. I'm excited that you made some time to chat tonight, and really appreciate it. I know it's yeah. I mean, it's a weird time.
Dude, it was awesome talking to you on that what was it, the Eventide thing. It's pretty cool. I don't know, you and I haven't really hung much, but we should start now.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just saying during the intro that I gave, it's kind of funny, like, shows our age, but like, I think it was like 15, 20 years ago, every band of every genre just played together. So I definitely played shows with Unearth, at like Hellfest or like random shows, in New York. But yeah, man, let me start with this. How are you managing to get through this whole situation, just on a personal level?
Well, I live in a very close family. Well, for a long time, I owned the house next to my parents, and my brother's on the other side of them, so we sandwiched my parents. We have like a cul-de-sac, but my sister just moved into my house. I just bought my folks' house, and we're building them an in-law and my brother. So we have like literally, 3 families, like kind of smushed into one area. So we're all kind of taking care of each other. I've been kind of the family mule. I'm the guy who's been like going out and like getting groceries and stuff like that. But well, I don't know if I had this yet. Like I'm a little bit nervous to get tested. Well, or actually I don't want to catch COVID trying to go get tested for it, right? So right. But when I got back from NAMM, which is a music trade show, if anybody doesn't know what that is, there was a lot of sickness around there, and a lot of my friends got sick. I even got sick. So I was kind of in bed for so I was in bed for like 2 weeks after that, and I was pretty sick. But you kind of always get sick after NAMM. So I might have already had this thing, but I'm not sure. But I'm not acting like I already had it, and I'm immune from it, right?
No, of course. You never know, man. Well, I'm glad. It's good to hear you being there for your family and doing all that. It's an important time to be there for our loved ones. Before we sort of jump into it, I'll let everyone know that's watching, if you have any questions that you want to ask, there's a question mark box at the bottom of the screen, and you guys can submit questions, which I'll get to eventually. So,
I'm saying hi to all my friends. Literally, all my friends are popping in. We got Mike from Sworn Enemy. We got Carissa Johnson from my grunge band. We got Lee Little, who he's the only man I know that can drink a full beer out of his nose.
Christ.
Katie from Fishman. She's in New York. I'm sitting here with my signature guitar, ESP, just doing my thing. And like Chris is writing right now, what's my favorite meatball? It's all of them. I'm Italian.
All right, well, guys. If you guys want to leave comments, leave them all night. But the questions, try to put them in the question box if you can. It's a little easier. But yeah, man. Shout out to Sworn Enemy and shout out to Tony at ESP. Really good people.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So where are you originally from, man?
I was born and raised in a town called Danvers, Massachusetts. It's technically it's the town in which most of the Salem witch trial stuff happened. Salem's kind of a tourist front right now for that whole thing. Obviously, stuff happened there, but we've got like super rich history there. It was actually called Old Salem Village back in the day. I lived on Putnam Lane. This fun little fact. I live on Putnam Lane, which is I live 2 houses over from Samuel Putnam, and Samuel Putnam was the one who was like basically putting people in jail and stuff like that for being witches and whatnot. So I come from a very, very historic town, and I used to live like literally a couple blocks away from the old Salem, what was it called? The Danvers State Hospital, which there's a movie called Session 9 about it. It was a horror movie about it.
Are you in Massachusetts still to this day?
I currently live near, I'm in a town called Grafton, Massachusetts. So I moved towards like central Mass, like later in life. I lived in Danvers, then I lived in Boston, and then I started touring heavily with my band. And then in like 2005, 2006, I moved on the same street as my folks.
Okay, close family. Good timing for that. Now, what are your earliest memories, not of necessarily discovering heavy metal or hardcore or like you're looking at, but just music, period, as a child? Like, what are your earliest memories?
Oh, well, my father was in a surf rock band in the 60s. And growing up, music was a huge deal in my house. Like, most families sit around and talk about sports or they watch the big game and stuff like that. My sister actually played piano, and she was like super, super talented at a very, very young age. She was definitely on and off Broadway as a singer. My brother went to Berkeley, so he was playing guitar. I was the one who was the most undisciplined, but I definitely did grow up in a house where every Sunday we'd always like, the women would cook in our family because they're great Italian cooks, and we would sit and talk about the Beach Boys and the Beatles and who's the greatest guitar player, and there'd be heated arguments over that. So I guess as a little kid, I used to go to my dad's band practices. My parents got me into Air Supply as a little kid, which is still one of my favorite bands of all time, and I'm actually lucky enough to work with them, with Fishman. But those are my earliest memories, and it sucks. I'm upstairs. Downstairs, I have a picture of me, like, literally, like, sitting on a piano, like, maybe 2 years old. My father's, like, playing piano, like, looking at me.
That's awesome, man. Hell yeah. And then as far as when you start playing, like, actual instruments, when and how did that happen?
So my brother was into like Paul Gilbert, Racer X, like all that like really cool shred guitar stuff at a very young age, and he's very, very disciplined. And he's a way better guitar player than I am. So still to this day, he's still better than me. But he used to have all these like really cool Ibanez's, and I just never got into the lesson thing. I just kind of learned, and I always tried to stay creative without knowing how to the theory behind it. But I would always sneak into his room and play his guitars. One time I broke one of his guitars. I chipped it. I dropped a distortion pedal on it, and I felt awful.
Oh,
But since then, like he's super cool about it. But those are my earliest memories. Like I learned from watching what he did, and because I wasn't super into theory back then, I was able to be super creative and not follow trends just because I was trying to create with the guitar that I didn't even understand what I was doing with it, right? Like, so I would learn how to play chords, and then I would start fooling around, and that would lead to other cool things.
So you were kind of self-taught, I guess. You had a brother there, but it wasn't like formal lessons.
Nope. It wasn't formal lessons, and believe it or not, my brother and my sister went to music school. My brother went to Berkeley, and my sister went to the conservatory in Boston, and both of them, were phenomenal musicians. I went to school for marketing and finance, And I literally ended up being in a band and touring the world.
I mean, the marketing and finance definitely applies and helps.
Well, it totally helps out because like when you're fucking broke on the road and shit, or like if you're managing money, I mean, we have so many stories where we'd be having thousands of dollars on us and we'd have to like manage what we're taking home, how we're paying off, our merch, how much we're making that night, what promoter do we have to shake down in order to get the money, like you have to be good with money.
I wish I knew what I know now when I was, hustling in a band 20 years ago, because now I work in the music industry and I sell, marketing campaigns. I work with your record label on occasion. So it's like, it really comes in handy to have these tools when you're in a band. So how old were you just when you were, picking up the guitar? How old were you?
I was 9 years old. My parents bought me it was a Mako. Remember the paint company? They used to paint cars, Mako.
Yes.
Mako made a guitar, and I just so happened to have one at that point. And shortly after that, when I was about 10 or 11, I got an Ibanez RG 560. And then I was about 10 or 11 at that point, and I really started getting into guitar. And I convinced my mother somehow to buy me a Loch Ness Green Steve Vai Universe, which was a 7-string. So by the age of 12 or 13, I was strictly a 7-string player, which is weird because I think a lot of people that know Unearth know that we've been playing 7 strings. But when we came out, we got a lot of flack because, it's like, oh, these guys sound like Korn. We weren't hardcore kids. We were metalheads. I actually used to be made fun of. I used to go to a lot of like straight edge hardcore shows at 12 and 13. I mean, and like they would call me Metal Ken. Like they'd be like, "Oh, it's Metal Ken over there." Like metal wasn't cool back then.
Right.
Yeah,
funny,
and
you mentioned that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, I was gonna say like another really cool story is that like when I was 12 years old, I mean, I'm so psyched that my parents did this, but my dad drove me an hour north to a place called Salisbury Beach, and I got to see Chuck Schuldiner in 1993 or 92 or 91 was it? Whatever, in Death, Individual Thought Patterns album cycle. My dad just dropped me off at a Death show at like 12 years old.
Damn,
And as I'm leaving the car, Gene Holgram pops out, like he's walking up the street. And I'm like, I literally reached into the car and I grabbed the CD and I asked him to sign it. And he signs it and he's like, yeah, man, all right, cool. And he's wearing he has an 8-ball cane, a big hat, wearing leather. And then like years later, we hired him to play on the Eyes of Fire tour when we parted ways with Mike Justin. So I was like, holy shit.
That's amazing. I want to say shout out to one of your former guitar players, by the way, good friend of mine, Kia, fantastic guitar player.
I have so many good stories about Kia. He's the best dude on the planet. I love that dude.
Great guy. Such a nice
Yeah.
guy. I don't want to get too off topic. So when you were playing guitar and sort of coming into your own, who were your sort of influences and inspirations at that time?
Well, my brother was definitely a huge inspiration, but like, if you could understand like what kind of environment I grew up in, my sister was she was into like classical piano. My brother was playing like glam kind of rock, but like also with that like, heavy guitar hitting kind of thing. But me, I was just always into like heavier stuff. Iron Maiden was like the first band that I was turned into that I was like, this shit is like what I want to hear. Like I wasn't like, I still like the Bolt Boys and Winger and all that stuff, but like I was definitely like, whoa, Iron Maiden's cool. Whoa, Sabbath's cool. I started like finding all these bands and like I found Slayer and I was like, whoa, this is like super satanic. And like I didn't really know how to process all that shit. So it was like a learning curve. But ideally what ended up happening is Unearth like found its sound because like years later was because I was heavily into Iron Maiden and we were very much into like bands like Pantera, Crowbar, New York hardcore bands and stuff like that, and that just fused itself into it. But a cool compliment I got later on was like Tosin Abasi and I do a lot of stuff, and he was like telling me like I used to see you guys in clubs. He's like, you guys were the first band to play like syncopated breakdowns with like sweep arpeggios, and he was asking me how that all came about. And I was kind of like, well, I listened to Paul Gilbert. I listened to all these guys, but I also liked hardcore. So It only made sense to try to do that type of shit. I'm not sure if we were the first band to do it, but for Tosin to say that, he may be right. I don't know.
No, I mean, I remember back then, because I'm from New York. I grew up on the New York hardcore thing, but I loved metal. So, I remember the genres when they were coming together, for the first time. And, it's so tough to go back now and sort of like, pinpoint certain things, because people used to call Converge metalcore. People used to call Cave-In metalcore. Now, whatever people call metalcore is a completely different thing. But I think that's like every genre, which we'll get to, because I want to talk about your feelings on metalcore and how you guys, to many people, are, I would say, pretty legendary at this point. You've been kind of in the game for so long. But to go to your backstory, still stay there. How did you discover underground and aggressive music? What were the bands and venues, and kind of give us a picture of what was going on for you in your local scene in Massachusetts?
Well, I'm glad you actually mentioned there was a lot of bands from this area that were really great, and I think between New York and I'm not excluding LA, but in Massachusetts specifically, and in New York, in Long Island, like areas like that, New Jersey, there was a lot of really cool bands popping up around that time, like around 97, 96. We were very much into like bands like Hatebreed. I definitely used to go to a lot of Cave-In shows as a kid at VFW halls. Converge too. There was a band called Alert back then that I liked. There was this like barn. Believe it or not, like where I lived, if you drove straight towards like Merrimack, there was this like weird barn about 30 minutes into down this highway and off the highway. And my father used to drive me there all the time as a little kid. And that's where I made all my friends. I basically was like this kid who never went into the city, always went to VFW halls and saw the most legendary bands, like totally rip the place open, Overcast. Bands like that were just like so fucking awesome. And I was into like, Vision of Disorder and stuff, and Earth Crisis. Yeah, like I was so into that. But like there was a point where like everything was like vegan straight edge. It was super hardcore only, not metal. Like I actually, it's funny. Like if you know the band Blood for Blood, actually there was a call.
Really funny.
Yeah, there was a guy. Yeah, there was a guy named Mike who played drums in Blood for Blood, and there was a singer. His name's Ian from Reach the Sky, and he was in Reach the Sky. But before that, he had another band, and he was just starting Reach the Sky. And I was like a little kid, and I was probably like 16, and I tried out for his band, and I brought a 7-string, and I played all the shit, and Mike, from Blood for Blood was playing, and he literally was like, dude, he like put his arm around me. He's like, you're a great guitar player. He's like, you're not right for our band, but you should go start another band. I think you'd be really good. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But like back then it was like, there was like hardcore and not metal fused together. There was kind of that thing, but it was like super straight edge hardcore. That was cool. And that's why I was kind of like not made fun of, but I was just that guy. I was like, oh, it's Metal Kenny, like.
Yeah, the joke is always on other people, because you just talked about so much stuff that just made me think about a lot. Like, I grew up in Long Island. I saw VOD. I saw VOD open up for Korn, and Korn wasn't big, and we thought it was a hardcore band. And we saw System of a Down play a metalcore show, and we laughed at them because we thought that they were fucking weird. That was a weird time. For
yeah, well, it's funny though. VOD, in my opinion, they just kicked ass. With Korn, I work with him now. I work with Head with Fishman. So like he and I are kind of friendly. But back then, when that first Korn record came out, it was only like it was a year. I had the record for a year. Someone told me to buy it. Like I was at a merch area at some VFW hall. And some dude's like, dude, buy this. It's going to be the next big thing. I bought it. I listened to it for almost like 6 to 8 months. And then it like literally the day it broke, I was like at a music store with a friend, and he was like, oh, I'm going to buy this Korn record. I'm like, dude, I have it. I'll give you the Korn record if you buy me this Hum record. I wanted the Hum record.
Wow.
So we traded. He bought the Hum record. I gave him my Korn record. And then the next day, that Korn record blew up, and I was like, what did I fucking miss? Like, how did I not catch this?
That is so
But it was a
funny.
little new metal. It was a little new metal, and I wasn't really like into that at that time, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, fuck, man. I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but my band is supposed to open up for Korn, hopefully, but the fucking pandemic has completely shat on everything. So I don't know if that's gonna happen. But yeah, man, Boston. I gotta say, there was a lot of good shit coming from different cities, like you mentioned, Hatebreed in Connecticut, Earth Crisis, and Snapcase in Buffalo. But Boston definitely had a lot of shit going on, man. Like, there was the whole Cave-In and Converge and all the bands that sort of came along with it, and the labels, like Hydra Head, definitely where you came from was a big deal for metalcore. So, I think there's something to be said about that you guys kind of stuck it out and you've been around 20 years later, kind of carrying the torch. When did you when and how did the band start? Why don't we go there?
Well, yeah, let's talk about that because this is going to be important to like the what you just kind of outlined. So I was I always played sports, right? And I know Trevor did too, the singer in my band, but like I played sports, so I went to school on a scholarship for hockey and soccer, and I was playing for the University of Massachusetts in Boston for both sports. But all the way even into high school and stuff like that, I was playing music as a hobby. Like when I had friends over, my hockey teams and stuff, they would jam on the drum kit that I had at my house, and I would play guitar, even though it was like, they weren't musicians. But like that's the kind of things that I had going on in the background. And then like it hit a point where I was like junior year of college, that I was like, all right, I'm not going to be in the NHL. I'm not going to go play, MLS soccer. I want to do the band full time. So I went to college, and I was literally like, my band would be like, we'd play every VFW hall in Connecticut, Boston. A weekend worth of shows would be like, the Northeast would play like Gloucester, Massachusetts. Then would play Rhode Island. We'd play New Hampshire. If they were like little small things. And that's the thing about Unearth is that we were never really the trendy cool band in the scene. We didn't have like the bird haircuts and like the red jeans. We did look like a bunch of jocks playing music. And we never really, like, I'm friends with Kurt Ballou. I love those dudes. I've met the guys in Cave-In. They're really cool, too. But we were never, like, super tight. They had, like, their own scene and their own thing that was happening. And Converge was, like, that one band that always played Boston. Like, we were always kind of, like, not the band to be able to get the chance to play Boston because we were just these VFW hall jock kids that played music. Once we started meeting bands like Indecision and Buried Alive. We booked it. Our first show, we booked it ourselves. It was like All Out War, Buried Alive, ourselves, and a band called Lunacy. And that's how we made some friends. And once we started making friends, we started being accepted a little bit more. And then like there was another second set of hurdles. Like when we started going like to California, like there was certain scene bands that wanted to be like cool with us because our record was doing well. And like we would be like, all right, guys, like, we'd have the van, we'd have like a square on the van, and we'd like, we want to play some wiffle ball with us, and they'd like think that we were assholes because we were jocks, and we didn't, we weren't like, we weren't like fashion hardcore kids. So believe it or not, like Unearth really kind of got its thing because like I feel like we really believe in the music, and our fans really, like the people who liked our music really believed in us and made us popular. Other than that, if it was up to the bands around us, I don't think we would have been quote unquote popular,
Yeah, man. You guys, I gotta say, like, it's very true because you were either a vegan straight edge hardcore band, or you were a tough guy hardcore band, or you were super artsy, and then like lastly, you were like kind of the band that was the metalcore band that sang about your girlfriend with funny haircuts and like the girls shit. And you guys definitely were none of those things at all.
No, and we were a blue collar band, and we loved playing with like Turmoil and Buried Alive, and All Out War was one of our favorite bands of all time. At the time, Sworn Enemy was like, we had this drummer who used to like literally like we would watch their shows, and he would sit in the back of the room and fan himself because he was like, this is so cool, like like watching those bands kill it. So I could clearly say that in that time period, the reason why Unearth sounded the way it did is because back then there was like bands like Botch, there was Cave-In, there was all these different types of bands that did different things, and it was so new that like we would play a show on like Friday night with Hatebreed and All Roar, and then the next night we'd play with like Overcast, or Kill Switch, or like Shadows Fall or something, right? So
Right.
our sound was like, okay, we got to have a set list that works for these types of shows that we're playing, and we got to have a set list that works for those types of set lists. Like we have to play for metal kids and we have to play for hardcore kids. So it just started to like fuse itself together automatically.
Same time too, because people, I don't want to come off like old guys too much to any of the younger people watching. Just
Yeah.
sounds strange to say that, but like, it was a very time. This is a time that I don't even think we realize that things are starting to kind of form. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but 20 years ago, these are things that are being, innovated. You know what I mean? It's because if you look back before our time, you have Agnostic Front and Cro-Mag, and then you have, Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer. So it wasn't until the 90s that these things sort of became what they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we definitely were. But if you ask me what is true metalcore, like what was the band that I think changed the world? Like in my opinion, I think the greatest metalcore record of all time is I would say it's a combination of records. It's the first two Cave-In records. I would say it's Beyond Hypothermia and Until Your Heart Stops was like the moment where I was like, okay, like these guys are basically the Metallica of our genre, right? Like they're like the best. They can sing. Like Steve Brodsky was already fusing the singing part together with the melodic part, with the and then like the brutalness. And like I used to just look at that and say, yeah, that's like the framework for everything. And then you had bands like Zayo that were really fucking good. And then like Poison the Well, like I'm not gonna say that they jocked any of Zayo's style, but a lot of that first Opposite of December record was very Zayo-y. And like those bands all kind of popped up around that same time along with us. So the coolest part about that time was that we were everything, the scene was new, everybody was doing something, and in order to hear music, you would have to go to the venue and watch it live, and then buy the fucking shirt and the CD at the
yeah.
And it was so organic, and there was so much excitement around that.
You bring up a good point too, and I want to move on to more of your career as it developed. But man, I actually don't think I ever heard singing melodic and like metal / hardcore until I heard Cave-In for the first time, and then it was after that I heard Poison the Well and all that stuff. But I mean, major props. Like Until Your Heart Stops was a fucking game changer. Jesus Christ.
They were 16 when they fucking wrote that shit. And being that age, I used to go to the shows and go, what the fuck are they listening to? Where are they getting this inspiration? But then sure enough, like the next band on was Piebald. And I was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. Because they're singing and being kids and fun and shit. And they took a different direction. But dude, how cool, like that time period. Like ask Steve Brodsky. I know you guys are probably tight because you're out of St. Vitus.
Yeah.
But like it was an exciting time back then.
Really was, man. So when did the band start to gain popularity, get signed? How did that happen?
Well, we signed to a record label called Endless Fight Records, and that was out of like and we have a song called Endless Fight. Endless, but no, it was like we got signed. We got on a compilation with like bands like God Forbid. I remember like there was a band called like Clubber Lang on it. There was like this like weird East Coast like whatever thing that came out, and our song did well on it. And yeah, it was like we went from the point where it's funny because I was in a bunch of like Unearth's actually technically my first real band. I had a couple projects right before that, but that didn't work out. But let me go back. It's just like we would do demos and shit. I was in a like we would do demos and like no one would ever really pay attention. But for some reason, I had this friend. His name was Dickie Durkee, right? He was in high school. He's a few years older than me. He knew how to record. And he recorded our first demo tape, and it was the first time I ever like put the demo tape in someone's hands, and they were like, "Holy shit, this is good!" And I didn't even realize it. Like I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool," but I knew. Okay, so like let me talk about Buzz. Like just prior to the Unearthing happening, I tried out for a band called .04, right? Now, mind you, rewind 2 years before that or a year before that, I was just at a Battle of the Bands at some high school, and point oh four was a bunch of older guys, and they played it. And I remember sitting next to one of these kids, like one of my friends from high school, and I was like, if I'm ever, they kind of sound like Obituary, but Obituary kind of wasn't cool at that point, at that time. And I remember saying to my friend, I was like, if I'm going to be in any band, like, it's going to be this band. Like, I want to be in this band. And sure enough, somehow Buzz saw me play at some fucking gig, and he was like, do you want to try out for my band point oh four? And I was like, yeah. So I remember hanging up the phone and I was like, you know, hanging out with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, oh my God, this guy from point oh four just called me. They play gigs all the time. I'm going to be in a band with that guy. You know, so like I got all excited. I got starstruck that Buzz called me. And so Buzz picks me up at my house because we all kind of live near each other. And fucking like we get to the jam spot, and the singer like looked at me and was like, I'm not playing in a band with this guy. Like, fuck this dude, blah, blah. Just because he wanted his friend in the band, and I wasn't his friend, and he literally, like, we didn't practice. Buzz apologized all the way home. I figured, like, this sucks. We're never going to be in a band together. And Buzz called me back. He's like, you know, this guy, you know, the singer in my band wants you to come back and try out. And I tried out. They had me in the band, and we just kind of, like, you know, we, like, tried as point oh four, and then the singer really just didn't work out, and I found Trevor. And he didn't sing like, if you listen to our early stuff, he didn't sing like anybody else. That was the best part about Trevor, is that like he did something that no other everyone's either trying to be super brutal or super this or that. They all had that thing. Trevor just kind of like sang, and it was cool, but it fit over like what I was writing. Yeah, so we went from a band like that. We signed to Endless Fight. It was all cool for a minute. We got on that compilation. People started like paying notice to us, and then like we met the Indecision, like Rachel from Indecision and all those guys, and they started like having us up. Sky Came Falling, and then
those are all my friends that I grew up with.
Yeah, best dudes ever. And then like This Day Forward was another band that was like
shout out to Vadim,
yeah, Vadim and Brandon and all those guys, which which ended up being in Circus Survive now or whatever. But like then it like out of nowhere it was like we started getting courted by labels, and we really wanted to be on Ferret at the time so badly. And we were supposed to play a show with Carl and Ferret in Canada. And they already, and Carl says this to this day, that it was his biggest mistake. He literally was like, no, pass on Earth, right? So we're like, fine. We got one offer we didn't get the offer that we wanted from Ferret, so we're signing to Eulogy Records. We signed the contract. We got in the van. We mailed it. We drove up to Canada, and we like had like one of the best shows ever in Montreal with Nora. And Carl looked at Rick, his guy, and he was like, "Hey, did you sign this band? Did we pass on them?" And he's like, "You passed on them." Like as we're playing, and Carl was like, "Fuck." So at that point, we signed to Eulogy. Things worked out. We did a couple. We had this like failure of a tour with Sky Came Falling down the East Coast. That literally all the shows ended up getting canceled. And our booking agent Jim Grimes was like, "I promise you that I know this sucked, but I'm going to get you an awesome tour in place of this." And then he got us on the Poison the Well tour with Spark Like the Friction and Sworn Enemy, and that changed.
I haven't heard that name in so long. Spark.
Yeah.
I forgot that band even existed until you just said that.
That's
Jesus Christ.
But for us, we were like, oh, sick, Poison the Well. Like, we've seen them play a couple times in Boston, and they were unbelievable. And we got the chance to tour them, and, like, we became such good friends with those guys. And then we started touring heavily with Zayo, another band that, like, we worshipped. And, like, those two bands at that time were so freaking big. We'd sometimes play two shows in the same venue.
Yeah,
like,
man.
in the same night. Yeah.
Sky Came Falling doesn't get enough credit, too. I gotta say, those guys are still really good friends, and, like, they didn't stick it out, but they were a huge part of that scene.
They were fashion core before fashion core.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna have to show them this interview when it's on YouTube so that they can see them getting props on that. They'll find that amusing. So once were you like a business student band, or being that you had like a little bit of a background with the marketing finance?
Well, Buzz doesn't. Yeah, well, Buzz doesn't. Buzz didn't tour in the early days very much. When we actually started touring, I graduated college in 2001, and from my actual graduation, I flew out to be on our first tour. ever. And our first tour ever was with a band called oh my God, out of Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania. Come on, I can't remember.
You
Mike
remembered a
Ski's
lot
the
of
singer.
bands from back then, man. You were
Yeah,
that's,
Mike
an
Ski's the
impressive.
singer.
Oh shit,
You know
Brothers
Mike
Keeper.
Ski,
Brothers Keeper.
Brother's Keeper. So I flew out from college to like graduate. I walked down the aisle, got on a plane, went right to Salt Lake City. Buzz wasn't even on that tour, so we did a lot of touring without Buzz. That's how John Kia and Kia English, those guys filled in for Buzz a lot. We had a guy named Scott from 7 Day Curse fill in with us, so we had a lot of guitar fill-ins. I kind of took the leads, and Buzz was just like not there for a lot of it. But yeah, because he was the only guy in our band that was married. But yeah, it was just like one of those things where it was like we just had to keep the ball moving, and Trevor and I handled all the business together, like 50-50.
It's not easy, especially back then. I gotta say something really fucking ridiculous, by the way, because like you're bringing. I kind of suspected you would bring up a lot of bands and people that brought up some memories, but the only reason I remembered Mike Ski's name is because there was a Nora show at TVG. He got stabbed at the show, and
I carried him out of the club.
Oh my God! What the fuck is that?
He got stabbed in the leg during until the end.
You
and
know what?
me
I don't
and
condone violence, but if anybody watching, like shit was a little weird back then, man. Let's just, sorry.
yeah, but that was a normal occurrence at some shows. Once we started playing South Philly at that time period, I think we got pretty much accustomed to that kind of violence, so we were already calibrated to not freak out. But yeah, I carried him out of the club. He was bleeding everywhere.
That's insane. Your scene and my scene had a lot in common with the violence for better or for worse. Like the Boston, New York thing was definitely nuts, and that's like the history of it too.
Well, I gotta say, like when we first started playing, like when we first saw Buried Alive, like the first time we ever saw them, it was like we saw a lot of bands from Boston, and they had a certain way about them. Like obviously, Blood for Blood was like top of the charts as far as being tough. Diecast, like all those bands were like super hard. Obviously, we already knew about bands like Madball and Sick of It All and all those awesome fucking legacy bands. But like once we saw Buried Alive for the first time, we're like in All Out War. We're kind of like, damn, these dudes are like big boys, like they play big boy music.
Yeah. No, dude, it was intimidating, right? Like, I mean, like the Cave-In guys weren't intimidating. Maybe they weren't like because they were so good, but like there were bands like Blood for Blood and Madball. Like you were like fucking terrified when you were in the presence of these people. Like you didn't want to fucking say the wrong thing. It was nuts.
I got so lucky at a show once at the Rat. There was a huge fight, and some guy like grabbed a church fan, like and ripped the grill off of it, and he was just started like hitting people with it. And a huge fight broke out. And those like big swinging metal hockey doors kind of thing? Like one of those swung open and I got pushed back, and swear to God, I was stuck in between the wall and the door. So all the fighting that happened was just happening in front of me, and I was just standing totally safe behind the door.
It's like a cartoon, man. It's literally like a cartoon.
Yeah.
So as far as like people kind of giving you credit for being kind of legendary or innovative at this point of the metalcore genre, how do you feel about that?
As far as, I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. What was the question?
I guess the question really is like, how do you feel now, having stuck it out for coming on 20 years, when you hear from people like that, you're kind of like innovators or legends at this point in the metalcore game,
Well, I'll say this, is that after we put out The Oncoming Storm, like any other band, there was a lot of great shit happening with like Killswitch and like Lamb of God and all that stuff. We were, but like once we put out The Oncoming Storm, it was really hard because a lot of people did what we did prior, like in between The Oncoming Storm and our next record. We almost felt like we had to change our style a bit because there was like so many baby bands that popped up that were like literally doing exactly what we were doing, right? And like one of the bands I do genuinely like, and I'm not, please, if they're listening, like I would never talk shit on them, but like a band like August Burns Red, like they literally did exactly what we did, and the singer did exactly what our singer did, and they did it so well that they got big off of it. And like even to this day, like Trevor, like people they're like, oh, Trevor sounds just like the guy from August Burns Red. It's like, oh well, Trevor was doing that about 5 years before then, but it's never like I am appreciative that we had our place in history. I wish we could have been like a bigger band for what we for what the groundwork that we did lay. But
Sure.
it is cool that like there's other bands like August Burns Red that have kind of taken what we've done and taken it forward, and they may very well be better at it. Who knows?
And hey, you know what? You guys, I would say, coming from a situation where I actually played in a band that kind of paved the way for a lot of emo bands. Like, I mean, we took Bowie and Cambria, opened up for us, brand new Taking Back Sunday, and my band broke up and my singer passed away, so we didn't really get to reap the benefits of that stuff. So the fact that you guys are out there still and getting any praise, and a lot of praise at that, I think really cool. I certainly recognize that you guys have really stuck it out, and there's something to be said about that. I know a lot of younger people, half my age, that are aware of Unearth and know the influence you had on bands like August Burns Red, which is cool. So I give you a lot of credit, man.
No, I appreciate it, and I'll be honest with you, like I'll never, like I want to see everyone around me succeed. I don't care what band you're in. I don't care if you guys like absolutely rip off, one band from the next or whatever. If we, whatever it is, it's a big pool of music. I don't care. The thing that I took out of this is that Unearth is always going to be Unearth, and we have our sound. And like it or not, if we put out a record and every single review is, oh, it sounds like they're doing Unearth, like that's awesome to me. That's like the biggest compliment ever. And no one can take back all the cool shit I did. I mean, we got to tour with Dimebag Darrell. We got to like play with Slipknot a bunch of times. We got to play every VFW hall in the world with all these awesome bands. I am happy that we're on the earlier end of these things, because I would hate to be the band that showed up in 2006, 2007, got huge off of MySpace, is on a bus now, has a career, but it's just kind of like whatever. You're just like another band that just kind of popped up at that time, right?
I mean, I saw Unearth 20 years ago, and then I saw Unearth last year with Gore. I mean, that's pretty fucking cool if you ask me. That was a wild show, which we'll talk about touring with Gore in a little bit. But what is the secret to sticking around for that long? A lot of bands we talked about broke up. You know what I mean? Or they did the reunion thing. So how do you fucking stay around for 20 years?
Well, Buzz has a good way of saying it. Buzz says that we're too stupid to break up. So that's one way of looking at it. But no, genuinely, like, put it this way. We all genuinely like each other, especially myself, Buzz, and Trevor. Like, we grew up together as kids. They are my family, right? So I would say that that's an important part of it, is the chemistry. If you're in a band and it starts off and you got one guy who's a showboat and one guy who's like just trying to pick up girls and like they're not a team player, usually they won't stay in the band. Like, we are all in on what we do and what we believe in. So the honest to God truth is that like we enjoy creating music. If we're playing in front of 10 people or a million people, whatever it is, it's kind of the same show. I mean, obviously you get a little deflated when you play a really shitty gig, but it's also awesome when you're playing in front of 80,000 people at Bucket, right? But we genuinely, we're like musicians first, and we care about writing music first. So there's no reason to break up if we enjoy each other and we still enjoy making music.
That's a simple way to put it, man. It really is. I guess it's as a musician, that's been in a bunch of bands and Unearth having still stuck it out. I mean, since Unearth started, I played shows with you guys to this net to now. I've probably been in fucking 15 bands, so that's why it's really interesting to me that you guys have kept yourself grounded.
The other cool thing. Yeah, I was gonna say the other cool thing is that I'm the only guy in the band, but I have side projects, and that keeps me fresh. I have a grunge band right now called Swivel. I absolutely love doing it because it's like grunge is the only other music other than metal that is kind of metal, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
You got like that. It's like that angsty thing, like that. It's talking about like hating this or being pissed or being upset or feeling low. So I really resonate with grunge, and yeah, my band. Like, if you guys out there want to check it out, it's called Swivel. Go on YouTube, listen to our first single. We're in the middle of finishing our record, but it's Swivel Clueless. Clueless is the song, Swivel's the band name. But that keeps me fresh. I did a comedy band once with one of my hometown friends and Adam D called the Sweatpant Boners. And I had like, kind of like a pop punk band at one point called USA, USA, USA. So that was fun too. And I did that with my best friend, Frank, and Dave, Dave plays in NWK, and Frank was in a band called Wall. Yeah. Yeah, the singer actually of my grunge band is Noelle LeBlanc, and she fronted the band called Damone.
Yes, I'm familiar with that band. That band was really good, actually. Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
When we're off camera at some point, I definitely want to check out the band and learn more about it, because Spotlights is a grunge band, I guess. So.
Well, if St. Vitus ever wants to have us, we would love to play St. Vitus. We're begging for shows.
Absolutely, yes. So what's a typical writing process for Unearth like? I was wondering how that sort of works.
Well, back in the day, we used to really hash things out with our old drummer, Mike Rudberg, in his basement. So it was like me, Buzz, and Mike constantly, and Trevor would always be there too. But like we always used to like hash it out. And that's how we wrote the majority of our music, like Stings of Conscience, the Endless EP, and Oncoming Storm. And then after Mike left the band, which was, a sad day because we all loved him, the writing process got really strange, including with, like, in my opinion, like with success, everyone kind of like feels like they need to be a part of it. So we would have like full band writing sessions where it used to be just a few of us. And then that kind of like altered things. And I know like Buzz had a certain way of writing, and I was starting to like, I really started to get into music theory and change my views on how I wrote. So I became the first guy that was like a hybrid dude who had my own studio and started programming drums and writing my own songs. And that has continued up to present day. And that's kind of how it goes for all of us now. Buzz does the same. He and I are both like smart enough to go, okay, like get your ideas out on the table. When you get stuck, I have riffs. And that's kind of like how we do things.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because obviously you put out, I think, 7 full lengths, right? Am I right? Or is it more?
Maybe.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, a lot. So,
Yeah.
And it seems like even though maybe you go like 2 or 3 years, it's pretty consistent. It's always 3 years or less. Some bands take forever. So I assume there's a lot of writing going on a regular basis.
Well, I'll tell you this. In the early days, we definitely had a plan of, like, we had plans of like making releases be frequent, right? Like, oh, every year or every 2 years or whatever it is. And especially when we got big, management like expected that too as well. Like, we got to, follow this tour up with another record and all that shit. That's when writing became not so fun. I love the fact that we're in a place now where I just want to put it, like, Extinctions is the first time that like we put out a record where we're like, we're just going to take our fucking time. And if it takes 4 years, it takes 4 years. If it takes 2 years, whatever it is. Like, there's a record called Darkness in the Light, and I wrote 85% of that record. I had my wisdom teeth out and I couldn't talk, and like I was a mess on pills, and I literally wrote the record in like 3 weeks. But then, like, Extinction was the first time that we were all just kind of like, let's take a breath. Let's enjoy ourselves again on stage. Let's write music that is accommodating to us jumping around and having fun again on stage. And sure enough, Extinctions was like, it was the right record for us.
Yeah, I want to talk about Extinction in a sec. Really quick, Michael Hudson wants to know, how was it working with DL?
DL's awesome. So that's a big part of Extinctions to us. Like, when I say big, so for people out there that like have written 7 or 6 records, you'll understand that your environment gets very stale after a while. Staring at the same computer, listening to the same records, being in the same environment sometimes like fucks with you. And DL and I have always been friends, and I just literally started going over there to hang out regularly, he and I, just to hang out as friends. But then it turned into a little bit of like, hey, what do you got? Oh, what do you got? Oh, we just started writing together. And then I started inviting Buzz over, and then Buzz was just starting to, so like it became this thing where like DL was just like a producer in the mix, pre-pro producer in the mix, and he was like the best part about DL is that like you'd write something, and then he'd go, no, you always do that, stop, like do something like this, and he'd pick up the guitar, and DL would write some parts too, and listen, like we've been so far in the game. Buzz and I have written like six records together. Like to invite a breath of fresh air and a new guy with a new perspective in the room was awesome for a minute. Like, yeah. And I would love to work with him again. DL is like one of the most genuine, awesome dudes on the planet. And if you have an opportunity to work with him with your band, you should.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. So I hate that we have 10 minutes left because it's going to kick us off. So I'm going to breeze through some questions. Ear Gimpy wants to know, I once did push-ups with Ken during a meet and greet and took a photo flexing together. When did he first start doing push-ups during his performance?
When money started becoming an equation. When I started writing my own phone number on my arm to pick up chicks on stage, it was the same time I was doing push-ups on stage. That's the quick answer.
There you go. Oh, shit. Okay, so Extinction, that's a really funny question. Extinctions was your latest record. Is there any new material in the works right now?
Yeah, I'm currently Buzz and I are currently like trying to write shit under wraps. But yeah, I'm going to be starting it up again probably. Like I literally have like a couple songs in the tank. So I'm looking to write 5. I hope he writes 5. We'll see what comes of that.
What record are you most proud of?
I would say I can't narrow it down to one. I would say Extinctions for the reason that like we're 20 years into our career, we wrote one of our better records. That's like a huge accomplishment. But believe it or not, like Stings of Conscience and Oncoming Storm, like that time period meant so much to me because it like pulled us out of being nothing to something. That was very like to call my family and say I'm making a living off of music was a big deal for me.
Oh my God, absolutely. I feel that way now. It's a combination of things, but I work at Revolver Magazine, my daytime job. So the fact that I could tell my parents that I don't work at Starbucks anymore,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this interview right now is probably going to end up on Revolver Magazine at some point. So it's like I'm working right now. That's fantastic.
Dude, I have the best picture of me chonging a beer next to Ozzy Osbourne on one of the Revolver covers.
Oh, yeah, it was back in the day. Yeah.
Yep.
It was an old one, yeah. Okay, this is going to go by quickly. So what was it like touring with Gore?
Gore is amazing. I can't believe that they put on all that shit before they play every night because it's such a fucking hassle. I literally sat backstage. Like, first of all, I know all those guys, and I work with some of them for Fishman, but I would literally be like, how do you guys keep getting into this fucking shit every night? It's so hard for me to put on shitty show clothes. Just being a normal dude, I don't even want to get into them before a show, and they have to put on this whole fucking thing. I'm like, you guys are legends. Them, Slipknot, anybody who wears crazy shit.
Dude, for real.
It's like, God bless them for the fucking effort, man.
It makes people like you and me feel ashamed that we ever fucking complain about anything. These guys fucking have to put on costumes, and they change costumes. And we're fucking like complaining about like normal shit,
Yeah. Well, they get to shoot blood out of their dick, so I can only look forward to that when I'm playing in a band at 60.
Funny thing is, I wear black all the time, and I decided to wear some white to the Gore show that you guys played. Total asshole.
Smart move.
Who are some of your favorite bands to tour with in a nutshell?
100% Every Time I Die, because we're the same age. We've toured the world together a bunch of times. Those dudes by far are like some of our favorites. Awesome. We love Sick of It All. Those guys, Madball, like those types of dudes, because we played Mafia together backstage and stuff. It's always a hilarious time hanging out with Hoya. So,
oh my God, the best. You ever smoke weed with Hoya?
Oh yeah, he's the best.
You gotta smoke weed with Hoya.
He said the greatest thing to me once. And I recorded a Madball record at my studio. It was Hardcore Lives. I produced that record. And it was late one night, and I'm at the console mixing, and he's like, yo, Susi. And I'm like, what's up? And he goes, you know those jeans you used to wear with the holes in the crotch? And I'm like, and he's like, yeah. He's like, you know the ones that your pussy hairs used to hang out of? And I'm like, I just started laughing. Yeah.
Michael Hudson, the band I was in was called On the Might of Princes. We were on Revelation Records. A bunch of emo bands that got famous used to open up for us all the time. Thanks for asking. All right, this is going to be a quick fire challenge, man, because you have about 5 minutes to answer this. Top five metal records.
Live After Dark, Iron Maiden, Crowbar. I would say Judas Priest, Painkiller. I would say Vulgar Display of Power. And maybe Sepultura, Rise.
Awesome. Top five hardcore albums.
I would say Inside Out, Zach De La Rocha's first band.
I was just listening to that today.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely one. Sick of It All, Just Look Around, Madball. Was the record called Demonstrate My Style? The one with Set It Off, right?
Yeah.
Terror. I would say one with The Underdog, and I would say, another great hardcore record. Oh, All Out War for Those Who Are About to Be Crucified. Holy shit, right. Is that the best? It's the best.
Top five metalcore albums.
Alive or Just Breathing, Until Your Heart Stops, Oncoming Storm.
Hold on. You got to say the band.
Oh, sorry. Cave In, Until Your Heart Stops, Cave In, Beyond Hypothermia, Killswitch Engage, Alive or Just Breathing. Unearth, Oncoming Storm, and I'd have to give what's her face, Ocean Between Us. As I Lay Dying was a good metalcore record.
Okay, In general, if you're stuck in the quarantine and you can only keep 5 records of any genre, and you're stuck with 5 records, what are they and why? You have 4 minutes. Man.
Okay, so number 1 would be Air Supply's Greatest Hits. Air Supply is my all-time favorite band, and every single song I ever want to hear is on that record. That's one. Beatles, I would say Revolver is very important to me. I would say Beatles, Beatles Rubber Soul would be another one. I'd have to have 2 Beatles records for sure. For metal, just so I could scratch the itch, has to be Vulgar, just because it's like you have to have that record. And believe it or not, yeah, and you know what? I'm going to give a shout out to a Boston band. The first Sam Black Church record, I would probably have that in my arsenal as well too. I love that.
Sam Black Church was sick, absolutely. And I'm just going to say to whoever this person is, I'm a Bourbon guy. Wanted to know what your favorite Smash Mouth song is. So Smash Mouth did not make Ken's top 5.
Smash Mouth though has one song, and that one song is amazing.
We have one more fan question really quick, and you have 3 minutes. Carl Nate wants to know, Ken, what's your current rig setup?
My current rig setup is I'm using a 5150, just a regular 5150 block letter or signature, either one. Max on overdrive, MXR gate, Fishman Influence pickups on my KSM Signature Series guitar, Mesa Boogie cabinets, very, very simple. What's going out to the front house is a 2 notes Cab M. I made my own impulses, and I have a signature pack with them. That shit is like ironclad right there.
Awesome. Well, before we say goodbye, I want to thank you so much for making time to do this. And I'm glad that there's like a bug in my face because I have the window open. I want to thank you for doing this. I'm glad that we came across each other in kind of a full circle moment during our Eventide session. And if anybody missed the first half or the first portion of the interview, go on YouTube tomorrow, look up Christopher Enriquez, that's me, and this interview will be up on my YouTube. Ken, any final words or shout-outs or anything like that?
No, just want to say thanks for watching, and dude, if your band's ever in town in Boston, please hit me up. Let's go. And if I'm out there, let's hang out. Let's actually be friends. We'll have an adult beverage or 2.
That's a good thing about the pandemic. I love it, man. It's great. Yes, I feel like we're old friends because we have so much in common. So better late than ever. Take care of yourself and take care of your family. Be safe, my friend.
Be safe, dude. Take it easy, man. Later.
Take care, brother. All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Sanitize and be nice to your friends and your family. Thank you.